Hi there, my name is Joshua Broughton. I'm going to talk this morning a little bit about population control policies and the math behind them and why they work and don't work. Expect a big laugh with that slide. So here's the problem, right? People have a lot of babies. People have large families. It's kind of the way the world has gone, especially in developing nations. A guy named Al Bartlett, who's a real smart guy, teaches for University of Arizona, said the greatest shortcoming of the human race is our inability to understand the exponential function. Here's what he meant by that. Just a little bit about the math at 8 o'clock in the morning. This should go right. Great, right? If we assign a variable, in this case t sub 2, to the doubling time, that is the time that it takes for one thing to double with any kind of growth curve, we follow this basic formula. T2 equals 70 divided by the percent of growth over time. That is absolutely terrifying. So if we look at 5% year-over-year growth, every 14 years our population doubles. Now let's think about that for a second. In the life of one high school freshman, if the United States had 5% yearly population growth, we'd go from 320 million people to 640. And by the time that college freshman finished his or her PhD, we would have gone to 1.2 billion people in the United States. That is a terrifying, terrifying thing to look at mathematically. The exponential growth function is extremely explosive. Because it is so terrifying, people pay attention to it. People know that it can be a problem, especially with population. So let's look at a case study, how one government dealt with what they considered an explosive population problem. Singapore. Singapore, we're going to talk about 30 or 40 years over the course of 5 minutes, so bear with me, this will be pretty brief. Singapore is an island nation in the Pacific Ocean. It is sandwiched between Malaysia and Indonesia. It's about 630 square kilometers. Here's a little map of it. It's, by all accounts, very beautiful. I've never actually been. Here's a little context to where it is. You see Malaysia kind of on either side there, and the island to the on the bottom left is Indonesia. So World War II happened, and after World War II ended, Singapore had a major population boom. The baby boomers happened. That's kind of the standard for all the countries that were involved in World War II. They had about 1 million people at that time and had a crazy, crazy amount of population growth. Something like every woman having 4 kids. So the government of Singapore came up with a family planning board that created this department, and they came up with this idea that 2 is enough was the name of the campaign. These are a couple of propaganda posters that I found on the net for the 2 is enough kind of propaganda side of the campaign. They also did some interesting stuff with incentives like no paid medical leave after your second child, and some other tax deduction disincentives. These are called anti-natist moves by the government. It is a form of population control through policy. There are other more violent ones, but of course we're not going to get into those in the 5 minutes we got. So it worked. It worked really spectacularly well. The Singaporean government convinced an entire generation that sorry, it's the dog plant, that having more than 1 kid or more than 2 kids was not only bad for the world but also antisocial. Here's what the total fertility rate looks like 1957 to 2001. That little dotted line there is 2 kids per woman. That is 0% population growth. That is unity. So 57 was its peak. 1977, Singapore hits 0 population growth. That's less than 20 years to go from 0, or from 60 to 0, I guess. Just very, very effective social engineering. The family planning board, because the population problem was not such a big one anymore, was eradicated, and Singapore came up with a new slogan, which has the hilarious name of "Have 3 or more if you can afford it." I love that they put that in parentheses.
Well, the problem with that is it hasn't quite worked so well. Here you see a big chart of the population of Singapore between 1871 and 2000. And you can see right at 1957 we have 4.4 kids per woman. And it kind of declines down to our current rate of 0.6. Now that table is a little old. It's actually at about 1.1 right now, but that's still negative population growth. Couple conclusions. We know that anti-natist and pro-natist policy can be affected by government, and it can work. You can control the population through policy and through incentives and disincentives. Here's a little bit of a bibliography. Anybody have any questions? Thank you, good night.